Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the No Laying Up podcast. My name is DJ. Got an interview for you today, kind of a bonus episode for you today. I got an interview with a guy named Carl Markestad, who is the founder of a company called Carl's Place, which is a company I had not heard of before, but they are a major player in the golf simulator game. I got golf simulators on the mind, I would say, as of late, because it's very, very cold at my house where I live here in Wisconsin. And, the idea of me playing golf out on green grass in the real world is still quite far off. And so I've been thinking about simulator golf, which clearly I'm not going to be breaking any news here, is very much on the rise. And that kind of brings me to the second thing, which is that I think for the last, I don't know, 20 years, I feel like I've had this preconceived notion of what golf simulators are. I mean, I remember in high school, I would walk into Dick's Sporting Goods, PJ Tour Superstore, Golf Galaxy, whatever, and you see a whole wing of the building that's been fitted out as this golf simulator, and it probably costs $200,000, and they use it for club fittings and this, that, and the other thing. And I think I just walked around for a very long time with that in my head, like that's what a golf simulator is. And obviously, things have changed immensely over the last 20 years as technology has changed. Launch monitors have changed. The space it takes to put one of these in has gotten a lot smaller. Golf shops have started to put them in a lot more. People have started putting them in their basements or their attics or their extra room or building a shed or whatever. And I just had like a bunch of questions kind of, rattling around the brain about golf simulators and how they've changed, how they've stayed the same, how one even wraps their head around the idea of maybe starting to possibly think about putting one in. And so I figured, I got aligned to these folks at Carl's Place, which just happened to be right down the road here in Wisconsin. They said, "Do you want to come by and have a chat?" And I said, "Sure, that sounds lovely. I'm not playing golf. It's 11 degrees outside. Yeah, I would love to come have a chat." And so that's what I did. So I buzzed down to Carl's Place HQ and had a chat with Carl himself. And before we get there, I want to give a shout out to our sponsor today. That is our friends at East Sands Golf Company. We mentioned these guys on our year in review episode, the kind of gin rewind that we did. They are a golf travel company, a husband and wife team out of Vancouver, Canada, that builds custom golf trips. And like truly custom golf trips is the part I would probably stress. They work with customers at a variety of different price points. I think honestly that's kind of their specialty. If you want to do the big swing, bag tag, berry, I want to play them all, they can work with you on that, absolutely. But if you're like, hey, I've never been to Scotland, I'd love to check out some of these lesser known places, that's kind of their bag. That's what gets them out of bed in the morning, is really showing off some of these places that we love to go, that a lot of other people have loved in the past, that you're not going to run into a bunch of tour buses. They're really great at putting together those types of trips and making you very comfortable along the way. So if you're thinking about taking a trip to Scotland, Ireland, Northern Ireland, England, the Netherlands, this is a great company to work with. They do personal trips, obviously you and your buddies, your family, whatever, but they also do group trips. They put together trips with, men, women, people of all ages. And they're massive NLU listeners. It's very fun getting on the phone with them. They get all the bits, they know all the jokes. And so what I'm getting at there is, if you're looking to take a trip with some very like-minded, or crafted by some very like-minded people, please check them out over at East Sands Golf Company, eastsandsgolf.co. They also have an incredible deal going right now for being an NLU listener. If you're a Nest member listening to this, you get $500 off any trip, which is an insane deal. $500 per person, I should say, which is awesome. Also, the first 20 people to book through this new partnership that we're doing between NLU and East Sands save 10% on their trip, which, unlike the Merch Czar doesn't let you stack discount codes. This one, you can stack discount codes if you like, and save 10% and get a Nest discount. So without further ado, here's my conversation with the Carl of Carl's Place. Carl, I'm starting kind of full internet parlance here. I was not familiar with your game, I think. Coming around the corner here, I was like, like, Carl's Place. What is this guy like? Is this a shed behind this guy's house? I'm like, no, this is a big operation here in Milton, Wisconsin.
It's gotten to be pretty big for sure. it started the way you thought, that's for sure. But yeah, the last few years it's really taken off, and we've built a lot here. So
why is this building so big? What are you guys doing here?
We make a lot of enclosures and stuff for golf sims. So it started as just a couple sewing tables and some work tables, and we have more and more to do, and these are big things to make, and so they need a lot of space, big rolls of fabric, and big long pipes, and yeah, it stacks up real fast.
Well, I want to get into a little bit about your background and how you got into doing all this in a minute, but I want to start. Let's hook some people here first. What's the question you get asked the most regarding this industry, your guys' business?
Well, besides what's Carl's place, a bar. That's
there might be a bar here somewhere. I mean, I'm sure there has to be.
Besides that, it's the how did you get into this is definitely the next question. It's a little different. It's a little specific, but people see the size of the place and they go, "What? Like that's what you do there?" And yeah, so that's where the conversation usually goes.
All right, well, let's get into that story then. How did you get into this? What's the kind of abbreviated backstory of your involvement?
Well, almost by accident, I guess I would say. This company started doing backyard theater screens. And I got into that just, because it was something fun I wanted to do. And, we made backyard screens for a long time. And then around 2014, 15, a lot of people started asking us about hitting golf balls into our backyard theater screens, which sounded absolutely ridiculous to me. But after enough people asked us about that, I was able to find some material that we could say, yeah, sure, this works for screens and you can hit into it. And from there, our backyard theater business just kind of slowly got outpaced by the golf interest, and at this point, it's all golf. So it was, it was being in the right place at the right time, and just trying to solve problems, I guess. So.
Well, I think a lot of our audience is going to be very familiar with the golf simulator. I do want to talk about a lot of different levels, because I think there's some interesting things about how you guys do it, at least as far as I understand it. So please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I'll start with some of my insecurities or my like questions where I started,
Sure.
poking around, and I'm like, I moved to Wisconsin a couple years ago. Like the weather sucks. You see it out there today. It's 38 degrees, and I wasn't dying to go play today. And so I'm starting to poke around. I'm like, all right, well, I need a place to hit balls. What does that look like? And okay, if I want to see where the ball's going, what does that look like? And so I know there's all kinds of different levels to this thing, but I think in my head, it's funny, like you get older, and I realize I'm doing this a lot more and more, but like you have this preconceived notion of what something was 10 years ago when you first formed your opinion on it, And so 10 years ago, I'm like, a golf simulator, that's, you go to Dick's Sporting Goods and they got a big giant thing, and there's no way that can cost less than $50,000 to put into your house. Like people are putting these in their houses, and then you start looking into how things have changed. And so all of this is a big setup to say, talk to me about that a little bit. How has this changed over the last 10 years?
Yeah.
And kind of what sort of levels are there to this thing?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I was in a very similar spot as you, years ago when we were getting into this, thinking that's not, our core customers were do-it-yourselfers. They were spending a few $100 to put up a screen in their backyard, and the idea of making a golf sim seemed, unreachable, just kind of silly. But as the years have gone on, the launch monitors have gotten very good and very much better price. Where you used to need a whole room of equipment to measure the shot, you can now get it in a little box that, either sits on the ceiling or the floor or next to you or behind you or whatever. And it does a pretty good job. And then the software has gotten very good also to where it's a pretty enjoyable experience. It's not so hokey as it was at one point. There's anywhere from you can get a device that you take to the range with you to just get data, and that's really all you're doing, to putting that in front of a screen, whether that's a full-on projector screen, in a big immersive display, or it could just be a TV screen, or it could just be your phone, any of the above. And then, like I said, from the data collection standpoint, you can use cameras or radar, and kind of collect whatever you really need to collect to have fun.
How did you, were you a big golfer getting into this?
No,
So how do you like keep up
yeah,
with all of the different
yeah,
moving parts of
yeah,
this thing? Because it seems like there's a lot that you'd have to keep up on, especially with how fast it's
right.
started to move.
Well, coming from the home theater, industry, there was always plenty of tech with that. I mean, projectors back
Yeah.
when we first started, it was all projectors. It was going from um, really basic, very expensive projectors to much better. So it's been kind of similar following that with the sort of revolution in launch monitors. So that's a comfort level for me personally, and for a lot of people on the team, is just keeping up with the tech changes and all the stuff that's constantly happening. It seems like every 6 months or so, someone's got a new little twist on it that you just got to kind of file in and go, oh yeah, that's a cool feature we can talk about.
Well, I guess then getting into like people actually building these things for their basements or their garage or their shed or their upstairs room or, whatever. I think another, going back to some of misconception or preconceived notion or whatever, I think I always kind of assumed like either A, this is a big one size fits all thing
Yeah.
that comes in a box and it gets dropped off in your driveway. And
Yeah.
then a bunch of contractors have to come in and
Yeah.
install this whole thing and hang all these things. Like poking around on the website, that doesn't seem like what you guys do.
Yeah.
So two questions. One, explain kind of what you guys do, what the model is. And two, like, is that unique in this space? Is there a lot of companies that do this? Are you guys pretty unique in that regard?
Yeah, I mean, your description of the big, a team comes in and turns your room into a sim is kind of what a lot of people I think of this. But then on the flip side, there are cheaper options that you can go buy off some shelves and kind of put all together. But we try to kind of get all that merged into a high end solution that costs more like the off the shelf thing. And yeah, that's where I think we're pretty unique, where all of the enclosures and screens and stuff that we make to fill out your space is configurable kind of down to the inch. So whatever space you have available, we can make you a setup that you assemble in your house and it's kind of ready to go, and you don't need real high end contractors or anything to get it done. If you have a space that remotely works, we can usually make it work. So
And then what happens? So then it shows up at your house, and it's a lot of DIY stuff, right?
yeah, yeah. I mean, that's we the company started in that backyard theater thing, but it was always a do-it-yourself product. It was always designed where hey, I need a piece of fabric that I want to hang up on the side of my house. So we sold them a piece of fabric, and then it was, I'd like a way to hang it a little easier. So we sold some fittings to make a pipe frame. And, it's always been along that line of really, really our primary focus is on helping people, be able to do it on their own without it being a whole ordeal. And so that's, like I said, the products are designed from the bottom up that way. So, you get, nowadays you get a big enclosure. It's a lot of boxes. It's a big delivery, but it's all done. We make a lot of great videos and content to show you. It's really, if you can run a screwdriver, you can put the thing together and have a place to swing your clubs. So
I was kind of shocked too. I was listening to other interviews and kind of doing some reading and stuff, and it seems like it goes together pretty quick.
Yeah.
Too. Again, it's like you have this idea of like, I'm transforming an entire room. This is going to take a summer to put this thing up. You're like, no, it's a couple hours.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you can do that if you want. If you want to remodel your room and have a very integrated thing, we'll help you with that. But you don't have to. If you have a spare room or a garage or a spot in your basement or whatever, and you just want to pop this thing up and start using it, that's where we really want to be able to help you out. So that's where a lot of the products live.
Well, I have a bunch of questions that I'm going to ask on like specifics here on like let's build a sim.
Sure.
Let's go through it kind of step by step. But I think what is interesting to me, and I think interesting to a lot of people, is almost like setting up the three different levels, right? Because I think we're going to say this a million times, I'm sure, is there's a lower level cost wise to do it. There's a medium level, and there's a blow it out, money's no object, that type of level. And so I think keeping that in mind, kind of as we go through all of these different steps. I mean, what is, I don't know the right way to ask it. Like, what is the minimum spend, or what is the kind of like, what's like the lowest level investment you see someone come through the door that you're like, oh, we can help you, with what you're trying to do?
Well, I mean, we make enclosures and screens, so usually that's the minimum of what someone's starting at, but you don't have to start there. You can use like a phone launch monitor, like a Garmin unit that costs you a couple $100, and you're simulating your shot right there. For us, usually people are doing it on a projector and a screen and an enclosure, and so for that, you're starting depending on how much you want to do it yourself, you can get by with in the range of $1,000 for a screen and enclosure. Then a launch monitor, again, anywhere from a couple $100 to, $10,000, $20,000. But yeah, that minimum is we typically say, like, if you want to get everything, $3,000 to $5,000 is really the bare minimum to get the computer, the projector, the screen, hitting mat, launch monitor. And then really as far up as you want to go from there, you can, you know what I mean? As far as like putting packages together on our website, it's something like a Unicore, or even a TrackMan, you can get into the 20, 30, even above 30 ranges just for a kit, really. But that's some pretty high end technology there too. So
maybe a stupid question. Might be a lot of stupid questions. Yeah. We'll see. But as you're going from, like you said, $3,000 to $30,000, what are you getting for that $27,000? You know what I mean?
The items that rise the fastest are probably the launch monitors. You get launch monitors that use high speed cameras instead of radar, or both. And you get really nice software that simulates the course that much better. And then you also probably get nicer projectors. And then of course you get bigger or nicer screens and enclosures. You know what I mean? So everything, you can pick and choose what matters to you, and what the best spend is for you, and kind of decide, hey, I want to spend my money here or there or both or whatever.
I'm sure this is the $1 million question, the $3,000, $5,000 question, maybe. What minimum? Let's talk like minimums, because I know it's kind of like, oh, we can make anything work. We can fit. Yeah. There has to be some minimums of what will work
space
here.
Wise. Yeah. I mean, usually people find that the height is the hardest thing to have. Depending on how tall you are, how you swing your clubs, all that. We usually say 9 feet is kind of the minimum for what you want for a ceiling height. Some people do it with less, they'll like only use a pitching wedge, and they're 5'4" or whatever, so they can manage that. But really, if you want to have friends over, swing a driver, 9 feet is kind of the minimum. 9.5, 10.5 is best. So
how often you guys get phone calls from people that are like, I measured wrong and I just put my driver through my drywall?
We do a pretty good job of making sure people understand what they're getting into. So that doesn't happen a lot. The far more often question is, hey, I got an 8-foot bedroom. I'm putting a sim in here. So just help me out. And we're like, well, all right, if you insist, we'll, keep that pitching wedge handy and just practice your chipping or whatever. And people do that, that's what they've got. So that's what they're going to do.
What's the most creative or imaginative place you've heard of one of these things going in?
Oh man, I remember people like adding floors to the top of their house to do it. You name it. Lots of interesting like standalone sheds in the backyard, or digging a hole to expand their basement or whatever. Like,
what does that mean? Just like breaking up the foundation?
Yeah, it can mean that you like bust the concrete out and dig down so you get more height. Or just plain adding on to your foundation and just having an extra room in your basement that's underground, essentially. Like, there's no limit to what a lot of people will do to get their golf sim, which, hey, I love it.
Well, that's interesting. Yeah, I've thought about building up. I've never really thought about building down before. That might be the play for me in the city.
My personal favorite is the shed idea. If you've got room for a large garden shed, like you could put a sim in there.
As far as like soundproofing and stuff, is that? I'm sure that's kind of like another thing you guys sell, but what has to be done residentially, I guess, in order to make sure that you're not waking up the whole house? Because a lot of this is, I think, a lot of this stuff makes sense for, man, I really can only play golf. I have kids or whatever. Like I can only hit balls at 9 o'clock at night.
The sound is certainly something to think about, but it's really not something we hear like people having that many issues with. It's like, usually it's in a room off by itself, and it's audible, but it's not like going to keep you awake for the most part. You think about your ball hitting the club, that makes a pretty decent sound. And then the ball hitting the screen usually makes another sound. But, we try to design everything to be pretty reasonable. And typically we do have some like acoustic tiles you can hang on the wall that helps with that. But it's not usually like a required thing unless you have a particular sensitivity to the sound. It's usually all right.
Well, I want to go through kind of like each part of the build, like I said, but before we do that, save some people from themselves here. Maybe what's the biggest mistakes you see, kind of over and over? Whether it's, I guess what are they? Yeah.
I don't know. I wouldn't say it's a lot of mistakes. Usually, the trickiest part to this is making sure you have your just everything configured well together. So getting a projector that fits in your space is one of the tougher parts. Understanding how to measure for the throw and like not have it not cast a shadow on you as you're swinging. That's probably the toughest thing to get just right. We help a lot with that. That's one of the most common questions we get asked. Making sure you understand all the features of your launch monitor, what it can and can't do, the software it works with, all of that. That's relatively straightforward. Usually people can, get what's going on with that pretty easy. And then just like, how much space do are you really going to be able to swing a club there once you add all your stuff? Like, do you want to put a chair in that room too? Because that needs a couple extra feet if you want to be able to have anyone else in there with you. There's one thing to have the minimum, but another thing to have anyone hanging out while you have that minimum.
True.
So,
well, going through the website, and you guys have this kind of build your own simulator tool, which I was messing around with quite a bit, thinking about my own space and what would work and what wouldn't work. You said the word enclosure a couple times, and I think everybody who's ever been to a Golf Galaxy or whatever knows what I'm talking about. You got the big black panels around you. Is that something is that necessary? I know you have kind of the almost like convert a room sort of option. What's the difference between those two?
We have a lot of people that are going to dedicate a room to this, and for them, you don't need an enclosure. You need to turn your room into a sim. And so there's kind of two major options there where if you're in a garage or a basement or a larger space and you need a way to collect your balls and make sure you're dividing the space, an enclosure is perfect for that. If you're taking a room that's going to be kind of semi-permanently made into a sim, we have our convert your room kits that fill the entire space of the room, provided of course your room is generally the shape that will work for this. You just kind of fill a screen across the whole wall, put some, line something on your walls to make sure you're not bouncing balls around, and that's your enclosure is the whole room. So, that's a real popular, like I said, for if you're not ready to quite dive in the enclosure, you can get a lower price enclosure and just plop it in the room and start there. But if you're ready to, kind of really get into it, then hey, turn your whole room into it and maximize that space.
I feel like, are there also a bunch of, I don't know the right way to say it. Are there different like levers that affect different things? Cause I'm almost thinking like with an enclosure is obviously going to help the projector as well, right? To provide like some kind of shielding from the light. And so if you don't have that, then do you then have to like spend more on the projector? Do you get what I'm saying? Is there any kind of like this affects this sort of things?
The projector is definitely one where if you're not going to have great control over your ambient light, maybe you're in a garage where there's a bunch of windows everywhere or something like that. Then brighter projector is a good investment there to offset that. Maybe a deeper enclosure. So rather than, hitting into the enclosure, you're actually in it, and then you can kind of block all the light out from around. There's a lot of features like that. Where your launch monitor is mounted, is it on the ceiling or is it behind you or next to you or whatever? So there's tons of environmental variables to consider that's exactly the type of stuff we help people with all the time.
Well, on the projector front, like, again, kind of thinking like low, medium, high. What are the options we're looking at? What is like to get in the door? It's going to cost you at least this for one of these types of things, all the way up to whatever. Yeah. And then also like how that seems like the thing that must have, along with the launch monitors, like those must have changed so much over the last couple of years. Cause I just remember them being gigantic and noisy and not very bright and all,
I've been doing projectors for a long time. So I've kind of seen the whole cycle where when they first got to be into an attainable price for home consumers, you know, it was getting into the $1,500, $1,000, sub $1,000 range. And there's still a number of options down there. You know, for under $1,000, you can get a 1080p projector that will do a fine job. You know, in a lot of locations. You start upgrading your projector to get higher resolution. You want 4K resolution. That's usually the first step to take. I would say most new projectors, I think almost all new projectors are going to be laser light engines or some type of solid state light engine. And that makes for a more uniform brightness as they age. And, you know, there's a bunch, you know, instant on, things like that. That's great. And then just overall brightness is the kind of the last thing that most people are trying to judge. You know, like I said, more ambient light in your room, brighter projector generally helps. There's some other tricks you can do, but yeah, that's resolution, light engine, brightness are the three kind of main things to pick with a projector.
What is the lifespan on one of those usually?
Oh, the newer ones, I think most are rated in the 25,000 hours range. That's one of the kind of downsides to the newer projectors with the solid state light engines is when they're out, they're out. You used to be able to replace the bulbs, but then you had bulbs failing all the time. And the solid state light engines are really good. And when you do the math on that number of hours, that's a really long time. So I've never used a projector to the point where it needed replacing until it needed replacing because there's much better options out there. You know what I mean? I've never just been like, oh, I want another one of these. No, I want something better by then. So
I don't know if this is a thing or not, but I'm just thinking about, as you're mentioning, you know, these were outdoor projection screens and conceivably like watching movies. And how does aspect ratio fit into all of this? Because some of this must be, I have this much space and I hit it pretty straight and I don't need that much room, but like you've also need your projector to fit into that aspect ratio, I would assume, right?
You know, aspect ratio is another one that's been fun because back in the early days of the home theater business, everyone had 4:3 stuff. And we were like working to convince people, you really want 16:9. That's all the HD format, you know, all that good stuff. And now it's like not many people have room for a 16:9 golf simulator. And so the 4:3 is actually quite popular, or custom. I mean, tons of these aren't quite any aspect ratio. But luckily, usually there's a pretty easy way to adjust the resolution to something custom and make it fit your whole screen. When we were into this earlier on, that was always the biggest struggle is like, make sure you're getting an enclosure or a screen that is an aspect ratio that you can fill it, or we'll get calls, you know, because I bought a big screen and I'm only filling half of it or whatever. So yeah, these days it's a lot easier to fill the screen fully, whatever aspect ratio you got. 16:9 is, or 16:10 in a lot of cases is ideal. If you have that kind of width for your space.
What kind of width are we talking about for that? You know, I know you guys probably have like, again, like some minimums for depth and width and all that stuff.
Yeah. If you're only one-handed, you can,
which is a whole other thing I didn't even think about. If you have lefties coming over,
lefties are a real pain if you've got those. Well, I mean, you usually want to be golfing from the center of the screen anyway. So, but you can cheat, you know, if you have a really narrow space and you want to offset your tee to the side a little bit, you can do it in a 12 or 13 foot wide room, one-handed. If you're putting the tee in the center and you have people on both sides, that's pretty tight doing that. And so, you know, if you have two-handed or, you know, righties and lefties, like 14, 15 is where I really like to see the space. And, you know, wider is really nice because you don't want to think about the wall behind you at all. Even when you're clear, you want to have, you know, a fair bit of extra. So the minimum in width, we talked about the minimum height. Minimum width, I like to say usually about 14, 15 is a lot better. You know, anything above that is great. So,
and then as far as the actual screen, you know, like you said, that's kind of how you guys got started. I got to imagine there's different levels to the screen. What are you getting as you're moving up between different screen levels? Yeah,
different screen levels are you know, they change price because there's more material in them, or they're slower to knit because they're tighter. So high level screens are going to have a really smooth finish. You're not going to be able to see the knitting in them as easily, especially from a tee position. And they'll be thicker and heavier duty for wearing purposes. So, you know, lower end screens are going to be a rougher texture. Maybe not as good for higher definition stuff, but cheap. So there's that option. And we kind of generally have three different. We have a standard, preferred, and premium, where standard is the cheapest, kind of utility, like, hey, it's a big white surface, you could use it. Preferred is like standard, but it's just a little tighter weave, so you just a little bit of an upgrade there. And then premium is a really much thicker material that has kind of a padding in the center of it that really has a really nice tight surface to it, so it looks really nice.
I feel like I keep having randomly more movie questions that pop into my head than golf questions at some point. But do you have people that use it for both? I would assume.
Yeah, I
right?
mean that's something a lot of people don't really think about. Is the golf sim can be really multi-purpose. You can get multi-sport attachments that really make it that way for its. If you've got kids that want to like play dodgeball arcade games or shooting games, or you name it, there's all kinds of other sports you can do on the golf sim. But also put up put your Nintendo Switch on there or throw up a movie or whatever, and it's a great spot. If you got kids wanting to sit down for a movie, like giving them that kind of space where they can roll around and get out of your hair is excellent. I can tell you from experience. So
I feel like that's, it was going to be one of my last questions, but I feel like there's all these like, for those trying to convince, a significant other, partner, or whatever, like, there's got to be like a break glass in case of emergency list of like, well, no, but the kids are going to use it.
Yeah.
I don't know if you get what's on your Mount Rushmore of those best, like, convincing things.
Show the multi-sport. Like there's some great benefits besides just you golfing. We definitely can help you with that pitch if you need it.
All right, moving to the big hairy one, which I think is launch monitors.
Yeah.
So I think, again, people who are listening to this podcast kind of know the basics. Like they certainly know the high end and the TrackMan and the GC Quad and all of those things. But if you could give just kind of a basic rundown of what are the different types of launch monitors as it pertains to this, and then I have to tell me if this is stupid or not, but there's got to be a cutoff at some point between like this data can be projected onto a screen and this cannot, right? So almost like kind of as you're going through it, maybe show where that cutoff is.
Yeah. Well, you have launch monitors that are really meant to be dedicated in a sim, and that's like the TrackMan IO mounts overhead, the Unicore IXO and IXO2 and XR. They're meant to just mount on the ceiling and stay there. They're purpose made for this. So they have their own built-in software. Like TrackMan has excellent core software, club fitting software, and all of that. Unicore also has that, but also can connect to third-party games. That's kind of the upper tier that I would point to if you want to be pretty serious about it.
And those are going to be like 10, 12, 15 grand probably?
I mean, the TrackMan IO goes up in the 20, 21 range. Unicore is available 10, in that like 6 to 10 range, depending on the model. The Pro TVX is on the lower side of that. So that's a really popular kind of mid-level. I wouldn't say entry because it's on the higher end, but entry into the high end, I guess I would say. Below that, not necessarily below that, but different is the more portable models that are, dual purpose, take them to the range for data, bring them inside and plug them in. And a lot of them do the exact same thing, just they sit on the floor next to you or behind you. And so for that, you get the benefit of being able to do your data collection and analysis at the range in real life, but then also you have that data at home. And some of those
that would be like the GC3 and
the GC3, GC Quad, the Flight Scope models. There's a number of those. The Unicore iMini is really good for that. They make the iMini Lite, which is the same thing, but it's not portable, so it's the same technology, but you just don't pay for the battery and all the other stuff. But those have an advantage because they have cameras that are right next to the ball, so they can give you really, really good data. They're just kind of in the way. If you have righties and lefties, you got to keep moving the thing around. So a lot of it is essentially the same. It's not all the same, but it's really largely the same technology, either packed in a box that sits next to you or sits overhead. And it's like, what fits your need the best.
What, in your mind, what's kind of the benefit to the overheads then? Right? Because if you're giving up that ability to like take it to the range, is it?
Well, they're out of the way.
Yeah.
You don't have to touch anything. You can have your righties and lefties there. There's a space on the floor. As long as your ball is in that space, it'll work. So, there's no configuration or anything. I mean, you calibrate it, once in a while, but between golfers, it's just go. So
what's you've rattled off a bunch of different companies and different names and stuff. You guys, I think that was the other thing that was kind of cool just clicking through is you guys are brand agnostic, right? Which is not something you see all the time, right? I mean, I feel like that what kind of flexibility does that give you in order to really like make something fit?
We partner with a lot of them just because obviously making the launch monitor decision is a huge part of making your sim, but our equipment works with everything. We have mounts that work with any of the different choices you make. And, really what we make is a big box to swing your club in. The launch monitor decision is totally independent of that. So we, even though what we spend our most time making is on the easier side of the decision, is like, hey, what's your space? Okay, let's put a screen and protection in there. Now let's talk about, what launch monitor you want and software and projector and all that. So yeah, the decision on the launch monitor and sometimes the software on top of that is there's a lot that goes into that. That's just kind of, hey, what do you want to do? What do you want to get out of this? Because there's different pros and cons to each.
Yeah, which again feels like, talk about levers, right? Yeah. Like there's just, what's the budget? What are you trying to are you trying to use this to play tour courses? Are you trying to do fitting? Are you trying to get better data? Are you trying to bring it to the range? Are you trying to, all that stuff, which that would make my head spin, I think, trying to figure that out.
And that's, we really try to help boil that down for people. And that's why we have that build your own tool on our website to really try to help, filter down. I mean, because it's a ton out there, but for a typical person, you can usually narrow it down really fast to, hey, what do you want to do? Is this for fun? Is this for you and your buddies to play golf? Are you trying to get really good? Are you trying to replace a trainer with this? Or all of the above, and then what's your budget? What do you want to spend on this thing? And when you answer those questions, you can usually get into a pretty tight range and say, okay, here's what you want to consider.
So I think that probably brings us into the software question, because this is where I get, I get a little confused. People have heard us talk about, we've done some stuff with Foresight in the past, and I have a GC3 in my garage that I use to hit balls into a net. Yeah. And in my head, I'm like, okay, well, theoretically, I should be able to connect this to a computer and like build a sim. I'm like, how the hell do I do that? Like that is so inconceivable to me. But
yeah, absolutely. With a GC3, you put an enclosure in your garage and get a projector, and you can do exactly that. But yeah, the software, every launch monitor typically is going to come with some software. The entry level launch monitors are often good for a phone or a tablet, but they can be projected onto a monitor or something. Foresight, Unicore, they have some type of like fitting utility to start with, which are really helpful for just you want to have a driving range session and track all of your shots and like see your grouping and stuff, slow motion shot of your club hitting the ball and all that. That's really useful. And they're all pretty good at that. They typically will also have some type of course software. You want to go play a course, you can use the system that comes with Foresight, or that comes with Unicore, or that comes with TrackMan. And then some of them also allow you to use third-party games. GS Pro is probably the most popular right now. And so like you'll have a connector where you click a couple things in your Unicore software or your Foresight software, and then that launches the third-party software. So that gives you access to usually tons and tons of courses that a lot of them are like community made. I mean, you could golf the rest of your life and probably never play the same course again. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's that is another thing I feel like I'd have to wrap my head around is picking a software. But do you have any You can name names if you want or not
Yeah,
name names. Do you have preference? Do you have
yeah,
like, I really like this? Because I feel like that informs kind of the
yeah.
launch monitor decision too, a
Well, I
little
mean,
bit.
yeah, the GS Pro
Is that fairly universal and works
yeah,
on a lot of
that's a
stuff?
really popular
Okay.
option. It has really good community support, so you see new courses coming out on it all the time.
And are
Um,
these like, probably a mix, but is this like, I want to play TPC Sawgrass, or is this like this guy dreamed up this crazy hole
it's a
on the
little of
moon?
both. Yeah.
Okay.
There's a lot of times it's a licensing thing
Yeah.
where you might not be able to
You're playing
play.
the island green,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
maybe not
exactly.
TPC
Wink,
Sawgrass. Yeah.
little bit of a wink on
Yeah,
what
sure.
you're actually playing.
Azalea National.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. But then yeah, there's also some pretty zany like fantasy courses. One of my favorites is a Honey I Shrunk the Kids course where you're playing like in super tall grass and you're miniature, and there's a lot of really cool stuff out there, like and that's what I love about GS Pro is that community content you can access. I mean, because on the other hand, you have software like TrackMan, which is really really good. The simulation experience is excellent. The courses are beautiful and very detailed. And that's a great solution for a lot of people. But yeah,
But that's proprietary to their launch monitor. Yeah.
you're not going to be able to use a third party software, and you have to use theirs. And they make it very good, so that's a good choice for a lot of people. But some of the other platforms, if you get a Unicore or a Pro T, you can more easily connect to the GS Pros. You can also use, the Pro T has the golf club, and Unicore has game day. Those are both solid options. But yeah, the point is you have options then. So,
And then I think this is like, again, forgive how stupid of a question this feels, but then am I just like going and buying a Dell PC to like sit right next to this, or what else do I need here?
Yeah,
computer wise.
For the most part, to generalize, you just get almost any gaming computer will do. Every software has its own requirements. If you want to do 4K, like if you want those beautiful courses I was talking about with TrackMan, you're probably going to want a higher end computer.
Which I don't even know. The last time, I mean, I feel like I've bought, MacBooks for video editing and stuff, but the last time I bought a just like desktop PC, was my freshman year of college, probably. Yeah. So like, what are we talking about for that investment?
Yeah, I mean, you can go to Best Buy and get a gaming computer for $1,200-1,500 that'll run most of this. If you want those high settings, high resolutions, get it closer to 2,000. If you want to just like max everything out, 2,500 or 3,000, range is kind of what we're talking about.
Okay, so now I have another question. Again, I'm thinking about all this through my own lens, but I'm putting this all in my garage.
Yeah,
it feels like now we got to start thinking about heating the garage pretty universally through the winter, or is this pretty resilient to some conditions?
I mean, you're as long as you're not golfing and freezing here. If it's comfortable enough to golf, you're probably fine, I would say.
Okay, all right.
With stuff like projectors, that's always been a question back in the home theater days where it's like, hey, can I use this in my unheated garage? Like, well, yeah, if you want to sit there in a jacket, sure. But what you don't want to do is like bring your equipment in from a cold place, bring it somewhere warm and turn it on, and you'll have condensation. That's kind of the only big issue with that.
Okay. Next question. Mats has to be just like a complete hornet's nest of options and ideas. I would imagine.
Yeah, you could say that. It's because it's at that point it's almost all just personal preference. There's a lot of different approaches to how to make a mat to hit a ball off of. People have opinions on what they like, and a lot of that is also a question of like how accurate do you want it to be to real turf? I mean, it's very difficult to simulate, being able to take a divot out of sod. But there's a lot of
on the flip side, it's very easy to blow out your elbows.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. But there's hitting mats that feel like you're hitting just off of a carpet on concrete. You know what I mean? And if you hit one of those fat, you're going to get a sore elbow pretty fast. And so there's just kind of like how much do you want it to punish you if you hit under it? There's mats that are like brush bristles where you hit it fat, you almost don't even notice.
Yeah.
Like that's great for a guy like me because like really improves my game. But that's kind of cheap, I think. If you want to be simulating a real shot, you want a mat that's gonna grab your club a little without injuring you, and that's really the sweet spot. And it really is. Everybody's a little different, with what they like with that. So
Do you notice, maybe this is too technical of a question, but do you notice any, like you said, the one that just passes right through and you should have chunked it, but instead you flush it. Does that show up on the launch monitor as well? Or is that more of a feel thing?
No, I mean, it's both. It feels great because it's like,
Because it is great, I guess. Yeah.
Every shot is a real nice clean pick, but the launch monitor is really only looking at what actually happens to the ball. So if the launch monitor isn't grabbing your club at all, you're going to hit it clean. You're going to get good, you might not get the spin you want because it doesn't, push against the ground at all. But you're going to get the benefit of that in launch monitor because it's measuring exactly what happens in the ball. It's watching frame by frame what happens with the spin, the speed the ball's coming off the club. So yeah, most of the time the software is going to like punish you if you're in the rough, right?
Yeah, but just by knocking it down a percentage or
exactly. So, but if in the game you're on a fairway and you're using one of these mats that doesn't punish you at all, and you hit it really fat, the game has no idea that you hit it really fat. If you didn't suffer, your shot didn't suffer at all. So,
okay, back to our kind of,
which is why I love those, but maybe not for most people.
Back to our kind of like low, medium, high here.
Yeah.
Most basic option looks like what? Medium option.
Yeah.
What does that look like? And then what's kind of the Rolls Royce option?
We have 3 different options, and I hesitate to say it's like a good, better, best because, like I said, it's so just what do you like? There's cost, good, better, best for sure. Our basic mat is basically a kind of a thick foam with the turf on top, and the turf is kind of thick. So, between the mechanics of the foam and the turf work together to try to simulate what a real shot is like. We have a lot of people who prefer that cheapest option the most just because they like how it feels. And that's, hey, good for them because they have the cheapest, replacement as you wear down the turf on it, you want to replace it once in a while. And that's easy to do. But then for people who want a little more nuance to it, we have a hitting mat that is kind of a different level of foam, and it has like a plastic sheet in it to give you a little more resistance as your club passes through it and over the turf. And then we have one that has like a gel core that really tries to simulate the sod. If you hit it really fat, it punishes you more than if you don't. You know what I mean? And that was really designed to do the best at simulating it. But again, if that's not what you want in your sim, you want to have an easier time, maybe that's not the hitting mat you want. So that's fine. I'm not going to judge.
That might be like the most golfer thing ever is building a sim and just making it harder to hit the ball inside of your own house. Yeah.
But I mean, there's also other mats from third parties that we sell that take different approaches. Maybe the foam is much stiffer and the turf is thicker. So it just gives you, your club grabs it just differently. You know what I mean? And that's where it's such a personal preference that I stray from saying, hey, good, better, best is this. Yeah. Just try them. You tell me what's good, better, best.
I think the knock on simulator golf that a lot of people have is always putting. Yeah. Right. How's that changed over the last decade or so?
I feel like for the most part, software gives up on it. Which I actually
auto 2-putt.
Yeah, it's like it's simulating a putt. The launch monitors just aren't looking for that. They're very, very good at all their shots, and they can measure a putt just fine. Like the measurement is great, but when it comes to being, making a good putt, you're reading the green, and when it comes down to reading a green on a 2D screen, like it's much harder to simulate than reading a fairway. You know what I mean? So most software these days has like a number of options where you're like, do you want to have no gimmies? Do you want to have like a 1 foot gimme, 5 foot gimme? Do you want to have like an auto putt? So you land on the green and we'll tell you how many putts that should have been and just give that to you. There's a lot, it's kind of whatever you want to do, you can do. I think it's usually fine. Like it's just more, It's a less of an accurate simulation than all the other shots are, and so if you're okay with that, just keep putting. But if you want to get a round in quick and hit the shots that you're getting the best simulation from, do the auto putt, and once you get it on the green, move on to the next hole. So,
what did I forget? Anything in my setup that I haven't checked out on yet?
I mean, we covered the space. That's the big one. Launch monitors, projectors. You know, the projectors is something I would say people probably spend the most time on picking. You know, usually the launch monitors are easier to narrow down to get what you need. The projectors are a little more technical, where you want to get it in the range to work on your screen, but it can't be too far away or it'll cast a shadow from you standing there. That's one of the things to be ready to solve is
what's the best way to solve that? Is it you guys have videos about that or something?
Yeah,
or
we have a projector calculator on our website.
Yeah.
So you can enter your screen parameters and you know, find something with a throw that works. But yeah, if you're not sure, call us. You know, we help with projectors all day, every day. So that's the quick version. Yeah, then from there, like you said, the mat, getting the mat you want, you get those things, and everything else is just kind of accessorizing and building, you know, what other little tweaks you want. So
I think moving away from like the actual building, how did so there's a couple things. I was reading some stuff on simulator golf, and you know, not surprisingly, like everything else in golf, it's kind of exploded a little bit since COVID. I think one thing I read was there's been something like 3 times more in like brick and mortar simulator places than there were 3 years ago.
Yeah,
something like that. I think that's like tripled in the last 3 years. What do you ascribe that to mostly? I guess.
Well, I think simulated golf just gets a different demographic. You know, it's a cross between the sport and the video game, and that gets a lot of people's attention. That you know, they think of golf as kind of the stuffy old person thing, and it's not really their thing. But you know, you get that kind of top golf, you know, casualness to it, and the video game aspect that people are really comfortable with, and it's easier to just go and try quick. You know, you're not going out on a course and dealing with like all the etiquette. You know what I mean? You can just go sit in a sim and bang away at it and, you know, have some fun. So it's a different demographic that gets into it. And obviously that leads to, hey, this is fun, I'll go try the real thing. So
I think outside of, you know, just simulator golf going up and up and up, have you noticed any more specific trends or like any specificity inside of that? Like who's putting them in or why, you know, any other trends you've noticed?
I mean, it's been, I love being in the position we're in because it's such a similar thing to watching home theaters from years ago, where the same places that you would have been expecting to see a home theater get built is a golf simulator now. And so it's that, you know, we work tons with people who are building them in their homes. And so it's what I love about it is that it's all over the place. You know, you have them going into really high end homes. You have them going into, you know, more middle class homes because you got a garage or a basement, you can do this. So yeah, the interesting part about it is the broad scope of it. I would say that it's a lot of people are touching it. So
what about like at actual golf courses? I mean, I'm just very anecdotal, but the club that I belong to just blew up a whole back room to say like we're putting in 2 more sims and they're booked all the time, and it's like it seems great, and it seems like a massive no-brainer, especially in this part of the country for a lot of those clubs.
It's a great add-on to lots of different businesses like that. But of course, golf courses, we worked with a golf course a few years ago that converted its entire pro shop into golf sims because they're like, no one's buying anything in there anyway. Let's put a couple of sims in there. And their tagline that I remember enjoying was that they were a bar with a golf course problem. And so having some sims in the pro shop was ideal. But yeah, I mean, we see that a lot. You got a storage room or a banquet hall or whatever that you're not getting the value out of, and you put a couple sims in there, and hey, you can stay open longer, you can stay open all year, whatever it might be. But on that same token, you've got, if it's a apartment building or hotel or any type of place like that where, you might expect to have some type of multi-purpose space, exercise rooms or whatever. Having a golf sim dedicated in there is just a huge advantage for a lot of people. So
I guess I kind of breezed past there. I made an assumption about COVID, but I mean, did things radically change for you guys? I'm sure maybe from a
it,
material standpoint at
yeah,
first, and then just from an interest standpoint, like what?
yeah. I mean, the golf sim business was before COVID was already really picking up. We saw a ton of growth in that in 2018 and 19. COVID absolutely, gave it a rocket boost and shot it up there. But then it continued really after that. One of the big questions after COVID was, oh, will this continue and at what pace? And it did. Like I said, COVID really kind of let us skip forward a few years in terms of gaining popularity and coverage and all of that. And so it kind of just skipped up, and we're still on the way up. So
I don't know why that makes me want to jump back to the beginning, but like, do you remember when you first made the switch from theaters to golf simulators? I mean, like, what was the first simulator you built? Do you remember?
Well, at first we only made screens.
Yeah.
It was the same backyard theater screen we made, but we just used an impact material instead. And we're like, hey, you figure it out. I don't know.
Do you remember the first time you, I'm sure, put a golf ball through the screen to see if it was going to work?
I remember we had enough calls and I said, all right, guys, let's actually find out. We hung up all our different materials and put up a driver and was like, nope, that one doesn't work. Nope, that one doesn't work. And finally, like, okay, we're gonna need something special for this. And but then we found some, and we started off we were just putting like a finished edge on it and saying, hey, I don't know how you're gonna do this. You tell us. And back in that era of the company, we had so many great suggestions and so many terrible suggestions too about how to put one of these screens up. And I took a lot of calls myself from people, having ideas about how to put one up, how to get in their garage or whatever. And it was really like 2015 through 2018 was like helping people do all kinds of weird stuff before we were finally like, okay, we know what the good ideas are at this point. Let's put them together into an enclosure that all these people would benefit from. And that's how our DIY enclosure was designed and came to be. And it was then, once we did that, we had even more ideas. People had all kinds of other feedback. They're like, okay, let's do it bigger and nicer. And then we have our pro enclosure. But that's what I love about the customer base we've always had, and kind of the way we've always done it is we get all kinds of great ideas. Like I said, some not so great ideas too, but the great ones give us great paths to ideas to improve everything and give a great experience for people. So
I feel like it's kind of like talking to a coffee drinker or something, and be like, well, what do you drink in the morning? Yeah. What do you have a setup at home? Well,
no, I have this. I live like 3 miles away, so this is my setup. And we have our TrackMan bay at the end in our Convert Your Room demo. That's really nice. But they all have different things. Like we have in the middle one there, we have the multi-sport. And so, it's not unusual that my kids will like want to come in here for a Friday night or something. And yeah, you can have one kid on that one and one kid on that one. And we've got it really good here to have, a bunch of them in a row. So,
and the showroom's awesome, but I would imagine you're not just selling simulators to the people of Milton, Wisconsin. I'm sure these are going out. Yeah. You guys ship everywhere, I'm sure, right?
That's our website. We ship worldwide. So, that's the vast majority of what we do is exactly that. We do have plenty of local customers too, and people come from a surprising, radius to come and check out the showroom here, because there's not many places where you can try like all the different launch monitors and hitting mats kind of all in one spot. And so that's what we've put together here.
Yeah. Do you have a little bit of like a, kind of a battery of tests that you put them through here?
Well, and then that's the same for us, our employees use this room, and our content team uses this room. And so we gain a ton of experience with the different launch monitors and products ourselves. So this is a really excellent space that we have for all of that combined. So
What does the bowling alleys do?
that's just
As soon as I walked in, I saw the bowling alley, a bunch of
yeah.
simulators, and the Big Lebowski pinball machine. I was like,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think
the bowling
we're
alley
gonna get along great, Carl.
at our old place, we put an addition on, and that was like 2021. And when we were building that, I joked about how we needed to put a bowling alley in because that's a big building.
Yeah.
And then we started looking at it. I was like, actually, bowling alleys are pretty big. And so
This is how I feel when I'm like, I could put a simulator in
yeah,
here. I'm
well,
like,
yeah,
I need how much space?
So we kind of shelved that idea, and but then once we started building this building, we carved out this space for a showroom, and it was like, man, that's the perfect length. We just slot a couple lanes in right there, and yeah, it's tons of fun. I mean, I like the comparison because I feel like golf simulation and golf simulators are like a more modern version of the bowling activity.
Could not agree more.
Yeah.
And that's what I think about all the time with all these places popping up, whether it's 5-iron or, any of these like types of spots, but even like you see them, it's kind of turned into this mix of like the bowling alley, if you want it to be that, or like the gym, if you want it to be that. There's enough of these places now that are popping up that are like, here's your key fob, book an hour on the app, and you're not going to see anybody. Just come and go as you please, which is where I'm like, on one hand, I'm like, man, that feels, it feels a little cold, but then at the other hand, I'm like, that's exactly kind of what I'm looking for.
Yeah, I mean, hey, like with a bowling alley, not many people have room for that in their house.
Yeah.
More people have room for a golf sim. But if you don't, having that neighborhood place that you can pop in and use that area is huge. So
yeah, it's awesome. All right. Well, I feel like as far as kind of landing the plane here, if anybody's listening to this and is like, hell yeah, I'm in, I need to build a simulator. What do you recommend they do? What do you make sure that they know, eyes wide open going in?
Yeah.
How do they organize their thoughts here?
Yeah, I would say, think about what you want out of it. What's your goal? Are you wanting for this to be a fun activity, a way to improve your golf game? Like I said, both. Think about what you might want to spend on it. Crank that up a little more, and then it'll be that much easier. But no, really, like whatever your budget is, like you can fit it almost surely. But think about what that is, and then think about where do you want to apply that budget? Do you want to apply that with the launch monitor technology, with a great immersive experience? You name it, just think about how you want to tune that. You can check out the build your own tool on our website, carlovd.com. And you can play with all that different stuff and see how the different choices stack up. We have a lot of logic on there that helps you, if you pick this thing, then you should pick this thing next. So that's a great way to play with all the many different possibilities. And if you have any questions, let us know. We have a whole team of people that have helped a lot of people do this and can make it real easy for you. So
awesome. Well, thank you for having me. This is, like I said, this is far exceeded my expectations. I'm like blown away at how cool of a setup you guys got here. So thanks for having me. Thanks for teaching me. Thanks for giving me a lot to think about with my garage. I don't know if my wife is necessarily going to thank you for that, but
send some pictures of the space over and we'll draw it up for you. And like I said, give you some bullet points for how to make the space not just for your sim.
That sounds great. That sounds great. Yeah, there's probably some other efficiencies we can figure out. All right, well, Carl, thank you very much. Appreciate all the time.
Thank you. It's been great having you.